Check. Oh, not bad. Okay. How's the volume on that? Not bad. And how's the volume on this one? Not bad. Excellent. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you for bearing with us on what is always an adventure. The technology and the facilities here at the Somerville Community School are amazing, and yet they sometimes throw us for a loop. So forgive the backlit projection screen and the fact that we couldn't tie into the house units. You're going to see a little bit of a skewed version here. This is okay, because our goal here is a conversation. Our goal is a casual, participatory dialogue between city officials, our local and state elected officials, and of course the DCR, Governor Baker's Commissioner Leo Roy is here with us. My name is Brad Rawson. I'm welcoming you on behalf of Mayor Joe Curtatone, who sends his regards and his regrets that he couldn't be here tonight. As folks may know, Joe has been dealing with a really challenging health circumstance, and although he has been working with our state delegation, our Board of Aldermen, and our partners at state agencies for longer than 11 years that I've been here, on issues like Foss Park, he couldn't be here tonight. His doctor is just telling him, listen, you got to take it easy. This is a serious health concern that he's dealing with. We thank you for coming out tonight. So the format is intended to be participatory and conversation-oriented in the same way that much of the grassroots organizing that you have all participated in over the last month or so has been. So we trust that everybody's going to be respectful. We trust that we're going to be able to pass this floor microphone around and have a dialogue about the current, midterm, and long-term future of Foss Park and the wider neighborhood. So as a bit of introduction, I serve as the city's Director of Transportation Infrastructure. I recognize many of you from a lot of public service here in this great city. The team that I'm responsible deals with the city's transportation planning, parks planning, and urban forestry. It's a small team of about 7 or 8 people. We do community meetings almost every night of the week. In fact, we have 3 or 4 of them happening tonight. We partner with state agencies like the DCR, Mass DOT, the MBTA, Mass DEP. We partner with regional nonprofits like the Mystic River Watershed Association. And it is just a real fun portfolio of issues. The common theme is our physical environment, right? We all want this community to be walkable, safe, sustainable, equitable. We take great pride in these issues. I'm just a little resident like most of you. My kid's going to be part of the amazing renaissance of the public schools. He'll be starting kindergarten over on the west side a couple of years from now. So let me do some quick housekeeping. I recognize the great public servants, elected officials that we have in the room tonight. So let me just kind of go around the room here, and forgive me if I start to blend Board of Aldermen and state delegation. Rep. Connolly, Mike Connolly is here, who represents this part of Somerville. Thanks, Mike. Andre Green is here, who is the chair of our school committee representing Ward 4 in Somerville and the Somerville Public Schools. There's Jesse Kling. Thanks. Sorry, Jesse. Ward 4 Alderman Jesse Klingon is here. Hi, Jesse. Alderman at Large Stephanie Hirsch is here. I'm going to go around and come this way. Alderman Matt McLaughlin is here, folks. Matt from Ward 1. Thanks, Matt. And let's see. Representative Barber, Representative Christine Barber is here. Senator Pat Jalen is here. Thanks, Pat. And let's see, going across the directions here. Am I missing anybody? And clockwise around the room. Okay, so I know that I saw Will here. Will Mba is here. Did Will step out in the hallway for a moment? Will had to go to a different meeting. Okay, so Will has been a great partner on these issues, and Rep. Provost. Great, thanks so much. Appreciate that. And it is my great honor to welcome Leo Roy, the fantastic commissioner of the DCR, who's been working in partnership with us as well. And Commissioner, we realize that you're responsible for 351 cities and towns, of which Somerville is only one, and you could be many other places tonight. We appreciate you coming out to Somerville. So, can I have a quick show of hands? How many of you live in the Winter Hill or East Somerville neighborhoods? Call it 60, 65% of the room. That's awesome. How many, like me, live in other parts of Somerville? Okay, not bad. How many of you are friends, allies from outside of Somerville? Medford, Cambridge, Arlington. Hey, the great thing about our parks network, about facilities like Foss Park, is that they're regional facilities, right? They serve an important role for our residents as well as the larger regional community. So for longer than I've been in my current position, even longer than I've been in the city, we have been talking about the role that Foss plays. And I think about all the work that community advocates, no matter what your perspective is, no matter what your particular issue or the hat that you wear on a given day is, people have been advocating for us to make sure that we're partnering effectively with state agencies, again, like the DCR, like Mass DOT. And we have a great track record. Most communities sit and, frankly, point fingers. Most communities sit back and say,
oh, we wish that state agencies could do more. In Somerville, our mayor, our board of aldermen, our state delegation actually asked us to get out of the audience and get up onto stage, to roll up our sleeves, to build partnerships and coalitions, to find local resources when necessary, to really work on coalition building so we can actually mobilize resources for the benefit of our residents. Foss is a 14-acre facility, as you all know better than I, particularly if you live in the neighborhood. And we're psyched that the DCR has invested in Foss just recently. The splash pad improvements commissioner were fantastic last year, and we're really, really pleased with the Baker administration's commitment to moving the playing field modernization program forward here as well. And yet we've heard from you all, again, whether you're just an individual resident, whether you're an elected official, or whether you're part of a formal nonprofit or community group, that we all recognize that there's a bigger role to play here and a bigger series of issues. We're going to walk through some of those tonight. 2 weeks ago, our state delegation and our board of aldermen organized a grassroots session where folks were really kind of getting their ideas together, and that was a great step in the process. I attended on a Saturday afternoon, had about 50 or 60 people there, and it was a really great cross-section of the community. Really appreciated everybody's work, and even a couple weeks prior to that, a smaller group had organized and gotten folks together. So our goal is to do a couple things tonight. Number one is improve the community's understanding and clarity about this field renovation issue. And then secondly, make sure that we're listening and also engaged in dialogue about kind of that larger midterm and longer term investment that we need, not only in Foss, but again, the regional roadways on the outside, McGrath Highway, Mystic Ave, 38, and I-93. These are assets that play a role in the regional transportation ecosystem. And arguably, they're not serving our community particularly well. And so we've been advocating for more walkable communities, reducing the barriers. I think about all the work that Alderman McLaughlin, Rep. Connolly, and so many others have done on the Kensington Connector. Notice that we're no longer calling it the underpass. We want Assembly to be seamlessly stitched into the Winter Hill and East Somerville neighborhoods. We want Winter Hill and Ward 4 to be seamlessly connected to East Somerville and East Broadway. And we know that Foss plays this important role. So with that as preamble, I'd love to introduce Commissioner Roy, and again, the goal here is to have a kind of an informal dialogue. So let me pop off the stage here and introduce Commissioner Leo Roy. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Brad. You know, I think I can fill this auditorium with my voice. Thank you all for being here this evening. I'm here really at the invitation of the city to answer any questions that people have. I think there's a lot of confusion about the project, and so I'm here really to answer questions. You know, things don't happen without partnerships, and we've really got a great partnership with the City of Somerville, with our elected delegation, and we really appreciate that partnership. We appreciate that the state-owned land represents a significant piece of the outdoor recreational area in the City of Somerville. So that's why it really needs to be a partner, whether it's Billboard Field, whether it's the planning that we're doing now for Draw 7 Park next to Assembly Square, or the work that's been ongoing at Foss. We recognize that the state-owned lands are important to you from a recreational standpoint. The DCR is all about outdoor recreation. We're all about trying to get people out of their outside, exercising, breathing the fresh air, and to gather the health benefits that really come from that outdoor recreation for people of all ages. So that's something that the Baker administration is really focused on. The other thing we're focused on at the DCR is the aspects of our name, and that is both conservation and recreation. And everything we do seems to be a balancing act between those two things. We're responsible for lots of the natural resources, 500,000 acres of land we manage on your behalf, but also cultural and historic resources like Plymouth Rock, Walden Pond, Mount Greylock. These are treasures that belong to all of the people of Massachusetts that we are the temporary stewards of. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and there will be people who are responsible for these assets and these resources long after we're gone. This is an important year for us. It's our 125th anniversary. We were founded in 1893 with the oldest regional parks commission in the world. It was a new idea back in 1893. Some people got together to preserve the Waverly Oaks on the Belmont-Waltham line, and the rest, as they say, is history. So the plan for this park is very, very modest. As Brad said, this past year, we removed the defunct wading pool. We provided a splash deck, a spray pad, which is great for the kids to do. And in looking at Foss, you know, we don't have an unlimited budget, and that comes as no surprise to you. So we really have to focus on those things that need the most attention. For those of you who walk by or play at that facility, you know that the playing field there, the football field, alternates between being a dust bowl or a mud puddle because it's such a well-used facility by people of Somerville and of the region. So the next highest priority really for Foss in the DCR's opinion was to replace the field with one that could be used more parts of the year. Somerville does not have the resources that some suburban communities might have, where they can have 5 or 6 fields and let fields rest for a few weeks between use to get the grass to come back. Unfortunately, because of the limited land area for parks and recreation, there isn't that ability to rest. The fields just get used day after day after day. And that's why the DCR made the decision, which I know is controversial with some in the community, to go with an artificial turf field as opposed to replacing the grass field. Part of the project is to improve the drainage, to put the artificial turf field, to add some lighting for the shoulder seasons of the spring and fall, to make the facility more usable. And that's really the extent of the project. So in partnership with the city, they came to us and said, well, gee, we'd like to do perhaps a little more as part of the project, maybe do some improvements to the landscaping, which is something the DCR currently has no budget for. And we said, that sounds like a great idea. If the city can invest $50 or $60 in some tree work or additional shrub work, that sounds like a nice enhancement to the project. And that's the extent of it. There is no master plan. There is no grand scheme for the future. Perhaps at some time we could do that for Foss, but with the limited resources we have now, we're focusing really on replacing the field with one that could be used more continuously during the course of the year. So that's, in a nutshell, and I've had some very thoughtful email communication. I did receive the petition that comes out of the work that many of you did over the last couple of weekends. There's a lot of very creative and good ideas in that. I think that the purpose of this meeting is to start this dialogue with the city about what further enhancements could happen at the park. But again, I think we're all thinking very modestly about what can be done. So I'll stop there because I'm really interested to hear from all of you, what your questions are, what your concerns are, and perhaps I've heard there's a bunch of, ideas or concerns that are out there, and I think if we can, put the rumors to rest and try to answer to the best of my ability any questions you have about the proposed project, and we'll see where we go from there.
Thanks,
Do you want to moderate, Brad?
Sure. Let me just provide one more piece of context, folks. And as a housekeeper, forgive me, Irma Flores, manager of the city's Summer Viva Immigrant Outreach and Engagement Program, is here. If anybody needs interpretation services, Irma can obviously work with you, and Luisa Oliveira from our staff is here for any Portuguese speakers. So that was just one quick housekeeping item for us. And a slide that I'll keep in the background here is really intended to help us think bigger, this larger kind of network of civic spaces on the eastern side of the city. One of the things that really kind of keeps me going is the progress that the city has made with participatory efforts from residents, community groups, and of course our state and local elected officials. So here's Foss right in the center. And, Commissioner, I was thinking about the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, your team did, again, some modest but really important improvements along the banks of the Mystic, finishing out and repaving some of the pathways between the Blessings of the Bay Boathouse and the Route 16 bridge up in Medford.
If you haven't been up there to check it out, I really encourage you. It's a dramatic improvement to, again, the mud puddles that were out there.
Exactly. And, many folks have been working with us on a series of city-funded and city-managed open space improvements, often done with state grants as well as local dollars. So just again, for kind of quick orientation before we pivot back into Foss issues, just want to make sure that folks kind of continue to view this important open space in the context of facilities like Chucky Harris Park, a net new addition of 3/4 of an acre that the city facilitated where we went out and bought land and improved one of our most memorable and unique public spaces.
out back at Teen Empowerment and the Senior Center on Cross Street East. If anybody lives in the Winter Hill section near the Otis Street overpass, and you'll certainly recognize Kremen Playground, newly rechristened. It was called Otis Street for a long, long time. We worked in partnership with state agencies to make sure that that's a wonderful facility worthy of safety, celebration, and enjoyment. And of course, just a couple of months ago, we opened the Winter Hill Community School, Community Innovation Schoolyard, outdoor classroom, small playing field for local residents, as well as our youth athletic programs and challenging tactile learning experiences for child development purposes. And of course, your Commissioner, some photos from your team, which of course are washed out, forgive me, of the new PATH system. So I'm going to keep that as background for the moment as we start to open it up. But understand that the City of Somerville views a commitment to open space, access, sustainability as a long game. Right? We have been investing steadily, well beyond the 15 years of Joe's leadership, but really accelerating during his time as mayor. And we have the next 15 years that we've kind of mapped out through community and technical processes. Anybody who's interested in those, Google Somerville Open Space and Recreation Plan. It's online, it's fantastic. We've gone through a technical and community process to govern our fields work. It's called a fields plan. You can find it online. So again, with just those housekeeping items, we'll now kind of open things up, and we'll take the conversation in any directions that folks want to go, and we'll be mindful and respectful of your time and do a time check in about an hour. Okay? Thank you. Renee.
Thank you. I'm curious about once this field is built, who will be in charge, sort of a multi-part question, who will be in charge of the field, both from maintaining it on a daily basis, picking up trash, to actually refilling infill that needs to be refilled, fixing tears, replacing it when it needs to be replaced, sanitizing it. So who will be in charge of that part of it for the cost and for actually doing it? And then also, who will be in charge of determining who has access to use the field, who does, when they do, and at what cost?
Okay, so...
We repeat, Commissioner, so anyone here can kind of get the gist of the question.
Okay, so I think the question was clear, but the first question is who's responsible for maintaining the field and the particular needs that a turf field has, and also the question of scheduling, who's going to schedule a field. So this is a DCR facility in the city of Somerville, so it's a regional state facility, and as such the ongoing maintenance, the trash pickup, the lawn mowing, the tree pruning, all of those activities, the responsibility for that falls to the state. So the state will continue to do it as it currently maintains Foss Park now. And with regard to the field scheduling, that's done centrally at the DCR. So there's the DCR will be responsible for the field scheduling.
And this is a theme that we've heard not only in Foss, but the city of Somerville is one of few municipalities in the state, right, Commissioner, where our Board of Aldermen and our state delegation have gone through home rule petition processes, so we can work in partnership with the DCR in a way that's different than most communities. Over at Dilboy on the west side, in my neighborhood, we have a collaborative management agreement that we worked out long ago. And so we're always looking to make sure that we understand the roles and responsibilities, the capacities, and the core skill sets. And Dilboy, I think, has been a fantastic example of collaborative management. Foss is a little different, but that theme of partnership between state agencies and local government, I think, is consistent and relatively unique in Massachusetts, right?
And I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. I have copies of the petition that the community of 60+ people got together and talked about. I'm going to pass them out to anyone who wants them.
Thank
Wonderful,
you.
thanks.
That was a very thoughtful piece of work that you all did. A lot of good ideas are in there. Yeah.
Question over here. Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Dana. We've lived on Foss Park for 30 years, so we were talking about the street we live on. One time we walked down there and counted 11 different team sports taking place at the same time.
Wow.
So anything we can do to make the park better for the people using it, we're all in favor of. There are some side issues, though, that the residents are concerned about. There's four different constituencies who park in that area. First are people who come to use the park. Second are the people who live right on the park. And the oldest buildings on the park have no driveways because they were built prior to there being driveways. Then third, you've got people who come at the crack of dawn and walk their dogs, and they don't clean up all the time. But the fourth group is the one I'd like something done about. This is the only unmarked street for parking in the entire city. People come from out of town, from out of state, they come down 93, they come at 7 in the morning and park for the day along Foss Park. Now in the summer that's very difficult because there's not enough parking for both residents and people coming to use the park. If the state would put in 4-hour parking, for example, it would allow the people of Somerville who have permits, who could park there, people coming from out of town for games could park for 4 hours, but people going to work who've been forced out of all the other parking lots where they used to park would not come for 8 hours and park on the street and take all the parking and then get on the T. So that's the group that I'd be concerned about, and I would like to raise that issue.
Could I just ask for clarification? So the street that you're talking about is the one that's parallel to 28?
Yeah, there's only one residential street there.
Okay. And that's a city street?
And there's only one with parking on the street.
Right. And that's a city.
All of us who live there, the older houses have no driveways.
Got it.
So, and before I sit down, I want to just say, this is the 100th anniversary of the death of Saxton Foss. I mean, not today, but this year, who died in World War I.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if we've done anything about that. And since I'm a historian, I just had to say that.
Well said, David. Thank you. It's funny that I was just looking at some of the city's archives of historic photos, and of course, those names, run through, and the park has gone through many iterations since that time, and it's always fun for us to try to connect this current moment to the past. We have heard again from residents that the parking challenges on Fells Way West are one of the things that has been problematic. It's important for us to make sure that folks understand that Fells Way West is a city-controlled street. I was speaking with the city's traffic and parking director, my counterpart, Suzanne Rinford, who was amazing, just earlier today, and said, Suzanne, we have heard from residents that the essentially 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. parking regulation is not meeting their needs, it's not meeting the park's needs, it's not meeting the residents' needs. Do we have the legal right to actually change those regs? And she said, yes, of course, Brett. So that is one thing that we will work on right away. It's easy. The city does not have to depend on Mass DOT or the DCR for that issue. So we can go through a process. The city has a traffic commission. We can change those regulations. And whether it's the typical 2-hour or resident permit sticker, which most of the city is kind of controlled by, or whether it's something that's a little bit more unique and customized to that kind of 4-hour block of time for picnicking, for games, etc. We will work with you, with Jesse, with Matt, and with everybody in the neighborhood to make sure that we understand and recommend the right regulations. That's an easy one for us. You have our commitment that we'll work on it. Thanks.
Hi. While we're on the topic of Fells Way West, I'm Mary Lancaster, and my husband Dwight and I have lived on Fells Way West directly on the park for 25 years next year, so that's a long time right now. But while we're on the topic of the street itself, things that people have talked about are traffic calming is something that's actually really increasingly important. There have been changes to the morning commute, such that you can no longer take off of Mystic, you can't take a right onto Temple, so a lot of the traffic gets funneled onto Fells Way West, and those folks are in a hurry on their way to work. So it's increasingly very busy. And another thing I want to just raise about Fells Way West in particular is that, I don't know why, but we still only have the incandescent lights on our street, and everybody else in Somerville seems to have the LEDs, and I don't know what's up with that, but it's very hard to get those lights repaired. I call, and so I just want to just point that out too.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate that. Let me speak to the traffic calming issue, because I know that, again, we've heard that from many of you. As I mentioned earlier, my team is responsible for a variety of issues, not only our parks landscape design,
but also our transportation planning, everything from saving the Green Line to tearing down McGrath Highway to neighborhood safety and accessibility improvements. We've been learning a lot about the science of traffic calming. We've had some great projects recently in Winter Hill and in Ward 1 East Somerville, and our team can evaluate in Fells Way West. We know about the race table at Jake Street and some of the research that we've done. Remember, Jesse, the speed hump at Marshall Street, where we kind of put those traffic tubes down to 3 locations and found that multiple speed hump had slowed the cars down for like 2 or 3 houses on either side of it,
Right.
then 5 houses up.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think we need some clarification on, you say it's a city-controlled street, but it's still technically state land, Fells Way West.
Forgive me, Jesse, my understanding is that it's a city street with our regulations and our...
City-controlled street, but my understanding is it's state land. I think the abutters would also agree that it right up into their property is
Yeah,
state
I
land.
got confused on that, because I understood it to be shared. Within the 25 years that we've lived there, it was actually state control.
Okay.
And during the time that we've lived there, it's shifted. I think Peter Ungar of the Foss Park, that's one of the things from the memo of understanding that he was referring to. I think that the control of the street became shared at that juncture, I think maybe in the last 10 or it may be 15, I think more like 10 years. So it is actually, it's somewhat ambiguous as to, it really is shared, and so, yeah.
So that's why I would ask when you talk about traffic calming, if we're talking, between Mystic Ave being a state road, and then also if Fells Way West is in fact a state road, like who would control putting a bump out there after the bank, where they couldn't slingshot around that street? That's one of the problems. But again, there's some confusion about who is actually in charge of that street. It sounds like we're in control of it, but it doesn't sound like we're actually able to make changes on that street, like the lights and stuff like that. So
let me double check. My understanding was that we can make physical changes to the street, and if the LED lamps are somehow missed because of this, kind of fingers pointing dynamic from a few years ago when we did that citywide transition, we can ask that question as well. I'd be happy to follow up on that post haste.
thank you.
I have a couple of questions about the field itself. It seems to me that the whole park floods, especially this year with all the rain. Is the drainage system they're going to be putting in going to suffice just where that turf field is going, or is it going to be aiding some of the flooding that's currently going on in the field? My other concern with the field itself is the lights. This fall, DCR had rented to set up temporary lighting for sporting events. We have pictures from our house where the lights are shining directly into our house, and you can read fine print. So that I know that at some other parks in Somerville, they've done a great job with the lighting and it only directs the field. So I'm questioning the quality of the lighting and actually the quality of the turf field too. I think the city of Somerville has a lot of educated people, and I'm sure they're quite concerned about the field itself, the material that was used, and what effects that has.
Great questions, Dwight. I can talk maybe about the lights a tiny bit, and then Commissioner, maybe if you'd be willing to talk about the materials of the field. Again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, so for anybody who was at our session over at Assembly on last Saturday, forgive repeating the story. With Winter Hill, we had neighbors who were understandably concerned about light spill for athletic fields, and our team was able to actually do some modeling. There are specialists who do this sort of thing, and we're able to model out the light spill of those new modern pieces of equipment, and frankly, people were still skeptical. And after the park opened, after the schoolyard opened, and some of the soccer and others were successfully using it, we got the nicest notes from some of the abutters who said, you know what, we know we gave you a hard time. That's part of what the community process does, and that's okay. They said, you were right, the light's not spilling. So with modern equipment, with the right kind of modeling and communication, we can make sure that folks understand where the light's intended to be and where it's not intended to be. The temporary units that are rented clearly are, sledgehammer as opposed to scalpel, and that's part of the reason that we want to get away from that model.
So, Dwight, to speak to the drainage issue, as I mentioned earlier, we're not redoing the drainage of the whole park. We're really focused just on the field itself. So that area will get improved drainage, but we're not addressing, the park as a whole. With regard to the choice of the artificial turf field, these fields have gone through, changes in design over time. And the particular design that we're using, in the early days, they used a crumb rubber material as the infill material. We're not using that. We're using a special rounded sand material. And so the infill material is a sand material. So it does certainly have sanitation issues. It needs replacement issues. These are not maintenance-free. It's not like the old AstroTurf days where you put it down in the backyard and that was it. These fields do need to be maintained regularly in order to keep them, you know, functioning. So that's the form of field that we're proposing here.
And again, for a sense of how that feels under your feet, Dwight, next time somebody's walking down Thurston, Evergreen, the Winterville schoolyard uses a similar material, sand base.
Can this count as my official question? Because I'm here representing people who have expressed concerns to me about the field, about the process. We are, with all due respect, Commissioner, we understand that, you know, as far as the state's concerned, community input is like not something that you guys are typically used to taking. But I am wondering what input at all could we have with regards to certain decisions that are made around, you know, like, I don't know if you're going to plant trees around this turf field, but, you know, my understanding is that the turf field gets extremely hot in the summertime, so like what measures are going to be taken so that we could address the heat effect of the field, but also like the abutters are concerned about the lighting. Once it's up, and then we'll have to call, and then the state will say, oh, you know, we'll get somebody out there, but then it's a different story. If we can get it right from the beginning, is there any way you could let some of our city staff into that process? It's probably, I would imagine it's a bidding process with the state. You're going to put out to bid to design firm, or are you doing it in-house, or like how much accessibility will the city have to what happens there? Because, you know, our people are really good, and not that the state isn't good at putting down a turf field. I'd like to see which ones you would point to that are going to be similar to the one that's going here. But that would be some of the concerns that I'm bringing to you tonight. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure. So the DCR often goes through a public process when there are planning activities or choices to be made where input would be, you know, helpful to the process. In this case, a decision was made that for the purpose of this park, we were putting in an artificial turf. So they really, that was the decision that the DCR made. So having a meeting to talk about the decision-making process after a decision had been made is frustrating to you and a waste of everyone's time. So the choices...
Tweaks that can be made to your design.
So the design contract has been awarded, and the design is currently underway. In terms of tweaks, we haven't yet received the designs back from the designer yet, so we haven't even seen anything to react to or tweak. Again, there aren't a lot of choices. I'm reminded of Henry Ford when they first made the Model T. They said you can have any color you want as long as it's black. So I'm not sure there are a lot of choices, you know, in terms of that, other than fencing, no fencing. You know, there are certain choices that will be made. Those are mostly driven by the operational concerns of the DCR in maintaining the field. So it's not that we were excluding the community from the discussion, but it was a decision was made that because of the use of the field, because of the demand for it, turf was the choice here. So people...
The question whether or not the turf versus the grass wasn't the question, whether or not that was a decision that we had input on. We understand what you're saying on what's going to go there. I just meant like the smaller little tweaks with the design firm and maybe, you know, some of the insight of our city folks will surely help us. And that's really the purpose of tonight's meeting and the work that you've done as community groups. The city is interested in, again, this is a partnership with the city. We're not doing any additional landscaping. That's where the city's coming in, and that's where I think the purpose of this meeting to get your input on what kinds of amenities and enhancements, you know, within whatever the city's budget that they've allocated for this project. Yes, there are choices to be made about that, and that's the process that you've begun, but we'll be continuing in this meeting and afterwards.
And if I could just chime in on that one as well, I appreciate that, Mr. Commissioner, I appreciate that, Jesse. Again, you know, as we talk about the Kensington Underpass, which is in the same neighborhood, it has kind of some similar characteristics. This is a state asset that our Board of Aldermen could say, well, gosh, should our city be spending money on this state asset? And one of the cool things for us as we work on the Kensington project is that our board has said, yes, we can and we should. When big development projects have kind of gone through the permitting process in Assembly and elsewhere, we've actually had mitigation payments flow from the development community. That's what helped build the Orange Line Station Assembly, state asset. That's what helped build the amazing boardwalk underneath the Wellington Bridge, connecting 10 Hills to Assembly. State land, state project.
Baxter Park.
That's right, Baxter Park had a big private contribution. A couple of recent projects have gone through the permitting pipeline where additional resources have been brought to the table as we've worked with our board, with our state delegation. And so our administration will give our board recommendations, and if our board is comfortable allocating local resources, then that may be a great way for us to do more than just the field drainage and lighting that the commissioner's describing. We're not prescribing that solution at this time, but we have heard from you all that we want more, and in an era of limited state resources, we may need to step up. We may need to recommend and provide a fiscally responsible recommendation to our residents and taxpayers. That's part of our job. It's something we're comfortable doing as long as you're comfortable as residents and stakeholders.
And if I could point out for Dana, the historian in the room, that Baxter Park is actually named after Sylvester Baxter, who was a journalist who was one of the founders of the Metropolitan Park Commission 193 years ago, or 125 years ago in 1893, who petitioned the legislature to create this agency.
I'm sorry, I was a little late, so I apologize if I missed it. My name is Corey Bean. I'm a resident of Ward 1 in East Ocean Park. And I'm obviously just really excited that something's being done at the park, so thank you for that. Well, you know, I was late. There's a lot of people who aren't here. What is happening? What is inside the scope? And what is within the realm of us to ask for the city to enhance? Because I think this is obviously a huge opportunity, and we don't want to miss it. And it's not clear to me, are you fixing one soccer field? Are you fixing all of the soccer fields, and the baseball fields and the tennis courts? What's inside the scope and what's not?
Sure. So the question is, what's in the scope? And a good story bears repeating, so I don't mind saying that. All we're doing is replacing the one field, what's currently the football field. The project is very limited in scope. It's going to be the replacement of the existing field where the Pop Warner plays with artificial turf field and some lighting and some drainage improvements just at that field. That's the extent of the state's project. We're partnering with the city, who has expressed interest in doing some landscaping improvements to the park. Again, I would describe them as modest landscaping improvements, some tree improvements, shrubs, and that kind of thing. So this is not a large master plan. It's not a complete
available for the area. Like, is that readily available on the website?
plan of what?
The area that you're actually looking.
So where the existing field is, that's it.
I could name 4 fields out there. So
Okay, the one that's mostly dirt, closest to the Latta Brothers pool.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Does the field include benches around it and abutting walkways?
We haven't seen the design yet from the designer, so I don't know what is included. Again, it's a fairly modest enhancement that we're making to this park at this time.
I have one more concern, and then I'll sit down.
I'll bring this to the back. I see a cluster of folks over there.
The major pipeline, north-south pipeline for gas goes under Miss Fellsway West and is on that side of Foss Park. If you guys get a backhoe and bust that and blow us up on that street, we're going to be really mad.
Okay. I hear you loud and clear.
Quick question, is the... Mike's not on.
Give it a tap, it should be working.
I think before you turn it up.
There we go. Quick question is the $1.2 million enough money to put in new lights, to put in the drainage, and put in a new field? And if it's not, is the city stepping up for the delta?
So the process that we go through is the designer will finish the design, make a construction estimate, and then we go out to bid for the work itself. So we never know exactly what things are going to end up costing until we actually get the construction bids in. Bids have been running in higher and lower of the engineers' estimates over the last couple of years. If there is so the 1.2 million is our current working estimate. If it's a little more than that, the state would cover that. It's not an agreement that we have with the city right now for any city contribution in the field replacement.
So that 1.2 is an educated guess by you guys?
Correct.
I guess I have the microphone here. Hi, my name is Andrew Platt. I live on Fellsway West. I own a home there. I've only been there for 5 years. So. Hold the mic closer. Sorry. I live on Fellsway West. I'm also on the board of some youth soccer, so I have a vested interest in this, and I have children that play soccer. My concern is something that, to build upon what Renee Scott had asked earlier, which was about the management of the park. I am very excited about the idea of there being a viable option for kids to play at Foss Park, because it seems to have been a loss to our city for many, many years. Like, we just have not had access to it. When it rains, it's miserable. When it doesn't rain, it's miserable. So to have a viable park there is fantastic. I am sincerely concerned about the maintenance of that park once that field goes in. And as you had stated earlier, you know, that Renee's question was about, will the state still be involved in the maintenance of this park? I have very little faith, please forgive me, in the gentlemen that are currently involved in the maintenance of the park. Is your plan, I know that you have cited many times that, you know, the budget is very small moving forward, that you don't have great resources, but is there a plan to expand those resources for maintenance? Because if you put a field in there, you put a beautiful $1.2 million field in there, and you have the current maintenance crew involved in, you know, this project, I don't think we're going to get the most out of that $1.2 million. As a resident, I live right across the street from the softball park, and I watched, you know, a tremendous rainfall. The entire infield of the softball field is a flood. The guys come in, they spend 5 hours, you know, cleaning out all the water. They, you know, they throw down sand, they make it a beautiful field, they line it, but they never saw the forecast, and that it's going to rain at 5 o'clock that night. And so everything's done, like, and then just start all over again the next day. So my faith in the maintenance is very small. So I would just like to know if the state has any plans on expanding financing for maintenance of this field.
So the question was, you know, the involvement of the state in the ongoing maintenance of the facility. We will have to add some additional resources, human resources, for the ongoing maintenance of this facility, because it is different than maintaining a grass field. So this is new for us. We have a turf field over at Daly Field on the Charles River, but that's maintained for us by Simmons College through an arrangement. That is currently the only turf field that's on state property other than Dilboy Field here in Somerville, which is an earlier generation of the turf field. This is an experiment for us. We're building 2 turf fields now. This one for you at Foss Park, and the second one is at Lake Park in the city of Worcester. So these are our first 2 turf fields that we, the DCR, will be maintaining. So this is new territory for us. So because of that, we are aware that we are going to have to, you know, increase the maintenance activities there. Different equipment is needed for maintaining the field, for maintaining the infill. So this is new for us. So we'll together see how that goes.
Can I just add one last thing to it? So I know that the maintenance at Foss Park, currently as it stands, runs from, I believe it's like April to November. So there are like 3 or 4 months where there's nothing going. Will you be, you know, maintain, like if you have an all-weather field outside, you're going to have somebody out there to maintain it. We can't have the trash buildup that we do from December through March. And that should be taken into account. If you're going to build an all-weather field, there should be an all-weather staff that's there to maintain it.
Good. Thank you for that suggestion.
And Andrew, you know, it's also worth considering, you know, the city's role. We hear on a variety of issues there are things that the city does in a great way in terms of maintenance, and other areas where we need to, as the commissioner said, kind of allocate additional resources, whether it's emptying the big belly bins over in Davis Square, or doing preventative pruning of trees to make sure that you don't have unacceptable hazard conditions going into a winter with heavy, wet snow, right? So there are a variety of issues that our team works every day with our partners at DPW and other operations side groups in the city to try to make sure that we're continuing to be a learning organization and asking our Board of Aldermen, not just for the capital dollars to build amazing parks. I mean, folks, I'm the father of a young child. I travel all over. I live 3 houses from the Medford border. Somerville Parks, the new ones that we've done under this generation, this leadership, this staff, are amazing. Better than Cambridge. They got more money than they know what to do with, and we're better than Medford for all their charms. And yet, we need to make sure that we're asking our board for additional maintenance resources, because it's not enough to just build an amazing park facility. The TLC, the ongoing maintenance, is so crucial. So again, your point is well taken, and we'll be happy to make sure that that's part of our ongoing dialogue and partnership with state agencies like the DCR.
Can I just throw in one really quick thing on the maintenance piece?
Please.
The way the trash barrels get emptied right now is by a full truck that drives and makes huge divots in the field. And there's a small wheel that, you can just drive them along the path, and then you don't have to do all the work on repairing the fields. It seems so simple to me. It happens every year. Thank you.
And yeah, Mary, again, we actually were just having a sit down with our DPW, our parks designers. Arn Franzen is here, Luisa Oliveira is here, Courtney Kirk is here, and we're doing a better job as kind of the policy side, the community engagement side of the mayor's administration, making sure that our operations professionals are at the table with us, so that if you need to design a pad for a big belly, if you need a curb cut that's compliant with a small refuse vehicle that DPW runs, that you're putting those folks in a position to succeed, rather than just have to drive away and have to cross Trump Field in a pickup truck and ruin a good piece of grass that we want to play on the next night. So again, I hear you. Where was the mic, Sean? You've got it at the back, and we'll continue moving around, folks. Thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you. Sean Becker, father of 3, attendant under, coach of 2 summer league soccer teams, and a member of Greentown Labs, where there are over 350 people who are much more fit and athletic than I am, one including who said, empty the trash through the winter. However, one of the things we've seen in other fields here is that they've been offline a long time. So I'm all for the field and plan that you're doing. But what I want to address is the speed at which it will be done. From what I've seen, it sounds like this will be online September 1st. But if it's not, that has a huge knock-on effect on field availability. I don't know, Pop Warner's over there. I believe you play in the fall, correct? And you have a jamboree? August 1st. Oh, okay. Well, that's an even more important thing. We don't have a lot of knock-on field space to go to. So if this is something that can be done with perhaps added cost, perhaps not, but if the design process takes into account the speed of construction. Tufts University was able to fully resurface, granted a grass field that's already well situated, but in 2 weeks with 6 weeks of fallow. You don't need any fallow time for artificial turf, but you do need more time for the drainage. So what is the expectation of timing? And if there is not a current one, can we say time is of the essence in this contract?
Thank you. No, I don't have the schedule now. As I said, we're in design right now. I think the plan is for the design to be completed this year, and then next summer the construction. But we'll coordinate on that. I don't have a clear answer for you on the schedule.
Next summer being 2019?
2019.
Let's, yes, please, no, we're down here. Okay.
I have a couple of questions. One is, to clarify, we keep on saying it's a new field. It's not a new field. We're just resurfacing an existing field. Is that correct? Correct to say that?
Well, it's an existing field, but it's really being, the material that's there will be removed, excavated.
Yeah, so we're resurfacing, reconstructing an existing field. And the scope is strictly of the field. There's no larger plan, because it looks like the community wants a large, everybody's very excited because this is a great potential to have a larger vision. Is there a plan for a larger vision in the future for this park area, for Foss Park, or right now we're just limited to improving the field?
Correct.
I just want to reiterate to everybody in the room, I think that Sean pointed out that we do have a field crisis. We have our football field team practicing this past fall next to a dog park. You know, that's like asking the swim team to, you know, go into a wading pool, pretty much. We have U14 boys playing right next to U8 boys, all crammed in. So I think I would like to press on about the importance of pushing on the construction of this field, because we do have quite a crisis. I want to thank Joe Lathan, who's done an extremely amazing job. We keep on taking fields away, and she somehow manages to keep us all active. So thank you very much. And thank you for the city for taking this initiative. It's been decades in the making that we, you know, have Foss Park, have something happen, and I hope a greater vision happens. But I do want to emphasize the immediate need we have for athletic fields. We have a great and beautiful youth here at Somerville. Our recent play event shows us what a beautiful youth we have, and we need to give them the facilities to find another outlet beyond the school curriculum every day. Whether it's theaters, whether it's, you know, music halls or athletic fields, we need to create a resource for your youth, which is our future. Thank you.
Walk us up here. We got a couple folks in this part of the room. Thanks. All right, yes, sir.
Thanks. I think I'll be pretty quick. Within this limited scope project, are you making any changes to the walkways?
I don't believe so at this time. Again, we're going to see with the designer as they go through it, whether there's some modifications, but it's not expensive. If there's any change, it'll be fairly modest.
Well, so I would just like, just to point out, I've always thought this was a little weird, but if you enter the park from the McGrath-Broadway intersection by the playground, if you want to walk to like the tennis courts, for example, you have to do this like really big circuitous path that goes all the way around the whole soccer field and then behind the baseball field. And I always thought that was strange. I think you could easily put a path that just connects those kind of parallel to Broadway. That would be, I would imagine, close to the edge of where this resurfaced field is going to be. So it could probably easily be added in.
We'll take a look at that.
My only other question would be, it sounds like there is nothing available for anyone to view. So it'd be great if at some point there would be. And I'm curious how we're striping the field. Are we striping it for popcorn? Or are we striping it to be multi-use? That's something I think is important to us. And inside the scope.
Can I see anybody back over here? Come down here. Please, Senator John.
Well, the woman that asked about a greater vision for the park, I think that's real, that we should talk about that, because I think that's what people have been talking about. ECR is committed to do the soccer field. But the mayor, when the delegation met with him and said there's going to be disagreement with, there needs to be some mitigation because people are concerned about the green or non-green aspects of a field, even though it's good for recreation. The mayor committed to doing other improvements, and I would like for people to give some input on that before we leave, because I think this is an opportunity. I don't know how much the mayor's committed. I know that we received a letter that included things like from the mayor's office at one point saying they would like to see paths from Fellsway West so that people could get to the Stop and Shop and cross the street safe. They would like a safe crossing. They would like to have the screening so that people aren't bombarded by particulate matter. So I think there are many ideas that the city's been discussing. There's many ideas that came out of the 2 meetings that people had. So maybe people would like to talk. Maybe Brad would like to tell us how much the mayor would like to ask the alderman for. And then maybe the alderman would like to tell us how much they want to advocate for to see what we can do to make this a better park.
Thanks, Senator. Points well taken. So let me preface this comment by saying that this is a state-owned facility. It Fortunately, our mayor, our local elected officials have a great dialogue with Governor Baker's team and with Commissioner Roy, and therefore we're not in a position where we're coming in, presuming to do a bunch of work in isolation or in a way that frankly is not collaborative, not respectful. But that said, we have great talent, great capacity, amazing residents who participate with us on a variety of issues. And with that framework of saying we're not presuming to tell the DCR how to do their job, we can always facilitate much more specific dialogue about this path, that lighting fixture, this plant material, this play element. But we want to make sure that that's happening with the commissioner's team in the room. I've been really impressed, Sean, with the folks in your office, the project managers, the staff who I've gotten to meet through a variety of issues. We're working on the Blessings of the Bay Boathouse, we're working on Draw 7 Park, and this new talent that you've been able to cultivate, Commissioner, are a bunch of fantastic people, and it seems like they're the kind of people who can sit with us around the table the same way that we do with DOT to actually say, we're not presuming to do your job or to tell you how to do yours, but we want to be force multipliers and be prepared to help be part of the solution. So with that said, let me talk very quickly about the edge conditions, and then maybe we can go from there and move back in and again, Senator, please. Yes, please, Matt.
All right. So, first of all, I do want to thank you for dealing with this. I'm very happy to see something being done with the field. I played on that field when I was a kid, and it's the same condition now than it was 20 years ago. So it's positive. I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I got to say a few things. One, wasn't happy that I heard about it from a press release after years of waiting to hold community meetings to talk about this field. So I didn't really like that. I'm not saying it's well. I'm saying that if we're being asked for money, I would like to hear about it before without a press release. I would like to actually hear that the city is committed to it, because this is the first time we've discussed the city financing a state project, this is the third time this is happening now. The city is funding a lot of state projects, and you're saying that the state doesn't have the resources, the cities have even less resources. So that concerns me. That said, if we are talking about financing this field, when I pay for something, I generally like to own it. And for years I've been told this could be a plan where we pay for the field or the state pays for the maintenance and then we take over the field. Now I'm hearing we're going to pay for it and you're still going to own it. So I would like to seriously consider it. If the city of Somerville is going to invest money in this, it should be off field so that we don't have to worry about the state coming down to maintain the field. We don't have to worry about them picking up trash, getting the stadies down here to address police issues. It should be off field if we're paying for it. That said, I don't want to be too negative. I am happy that this is happening. But when you start talking about money and I'm looking at budgets, I pay for things that belong to me. I don't pay for something that somebody else has.
Well said, Matt. Thank you. Stephanie, please.
Yeah, just to echo both Senator Jalen and Alderman McLaughlin's point, I feel like I've been living and working in Somerville for 15 years, and I feel like this question has been around for that entire time. And it's always been sort of a black box where the city says, well, we can't tell you what's possible in terms of what we can do because of the state, and we can't quite figure out what the state is able to do because it's so far removed from us. And meanwhile, nothing changes in the park, and things don't get better, and it's our biggest open space, right? Is that right? In the city. So I would like to see, this bigger discussion, and it seems like the city definitely can participate in that, and maybe we put some resources into having the bigger discussion and compress the timeline and have a few meetings. We could have like a no RFP, $10,000 contract for a landscape architect who could come in and have 3 meetings, just do this broad sketch, a schematic design. We could do it and not derail at all the rectangular field plan. And then we would like to know, I would like to know what's in that black box. Like, what's on the table for negotiation? Yeah, I understand negotiation maybe has to happen in closed doors, but is there some plan where in 2 years we're going to do this, and this is what the management agreement is going to look like, and here's what piece of the city is going to help work on? Because, for example, that playground, like Ellen, if you saw the picture that Ellen passed around, that playground is, I don't know how old. You said, Matt, it was there when you were a kid. It's right in the elbow of some of the highest traffic pollutants. And we know is anybody from Little Busybodies here? They go out there every day. They're out there for hours. It's awesome that they're out there playing, but do they really want to be on this 60-year-old playground, play elements in like one of the most toxic air quality conditions? So this is I don't care if we put it, who owns it. It's right here. Let's have a 20-year lease to manage these pieces of it. We got lawyers, we can work this out. But just to sit back and wait another 15 years to say, this is too complex, it's too much negotiation, it's in a mysterious black box. I just think that is a real missed opportunity for all the people around in this neighborhood that has very, very little open space, all kinds of environmental hardships. And let's get something done with this. Let this be the catalyst to do a lot more. And I would love to fund it with the board. I would want to fund the design contract tomorrow if we could at a Board of Alderman meeting. I want to fund $3 million of capital investment the next 2 years and then $3 million after that. So I'm ready to do it and I want to do it.
Again, well said, and the spirit of this type of dialogue and the spirit of Sean and the Commissioner and their team working and listening with us is that we can figure out a respectful way to do that rather than sitting outside throwing rocks at one another. Often, that's how municipalities and state agencies treat one another, and we're fortunate, again, that we have this open line of dialogue, so again, well said, and thank you. So before we go too far down that road, and I think that's exactly the type of conversation to have, let me just kind of give folks a sense that we're working with another of Governor Baker's teams and actually have some capital funding allocated for a couple of years from now. And these are going to be edge conditions, right? McGrath is a state road, and we've heard, you're not going to be able to see it very well in this washed out projector, I apologize, but again, folks climb through the fence to access the grocery store. This is undignified and unsafe and inappropriate. And yet you can't blame somebody if that's the shortest path. People are like water. They're going to find that shortest path. Triangulation is just how we move around on foot. We are working with DOT right now. We've got a couple $1 million worth of construction budget of federal funds that are kind of teed up for spending in 2020. We just started the design process and just sat down to scope the same kind of design exercise. And DOT, just as every state agency does, says to us, hey, you know your constituents best. You know your blocks best. You know your local issues best. Let's work together, help us understand how to have a great community process and technical process. And so this is one of the intersections that DOT is going to be working on. Yes, we have traffic signals. There's no illegal crosswalk. It is unsafe, high speed, 6 lanes of traffic. All the pollution and particulate issues that so many have worked on over the years are very much on our mind from a health and from an equity and usability standpoint. The same condition actually exists up here, and the DOT study that I'm referring to is going to give us the ability to address these northern edge conditions. So here's Fellsway West. So you're headed eastbound on Mystic 38. Stop and Shop in this case is now far in the background here. Here's that softball field that you were talking about earlier, Sean, I think, in terms of the flooding. This, for me, is an unbelievable waste of public resource. This is a piece of the state-owned roadway that's too much asphalt in our community. Somerville's 4 square miles. One of those square miles is roadways. Clearly, we need to do better. We have vast affordable housing needs. We have vast open space needs. And if we can repurpose space that we have dedicated to the automobile, then I think we can have more humane, safe, and healthy communities. So one of the things that we've talked about with DOT is whether this edge condition can be converted. Honestly, I don't think they need 3 lanes of eastbound traffic here. So let's not just take this marked area. Let's take this free right-hand turn. The geometry of this turn becomes, again, terribly offensive and dangerous when you look at it in the overhead. Check this out. See this geometry? You're coming now eastbound on 38. You're passing the softball field, and you're swinging south onto McGrath. The geometry of this is like a Formula 500 track. It incentivizes fast driving. And what happens when a resident has actually stepped through that hole in the fence, carrying groceries to get to the grocery store? That some out-of-town fast driver who's looking at their mobile device doesn't realize that the light's going yellow at Blakely, and all of a sudden you're in a really unsafe condition. Our partners at DOT have heard us, and we have said that your designer really ought to look at squaring this off to the extent that they can to slow the cars down. These are examples of great local and state collaborations. So stuff is happening. Design process, community process will be underway over the next year or so to tee up a construction job that gets bid in calendar 2020, and hopefully they'll start construction in 2020. So I'm really, really excited about that. And now to get back to the core issues of the park itself, if we are thinking about a more humane edge condition at Blakely, which is, again, that desire line from Jake Street, from the old path, some of the great old growth trees, those northern edge conditions, how can we start to take that kind of skeletal system and put the muscles and the flesh on the bones, in partnership with the DCR team. So I just wanted to kind of take that moment from a housekeeping standpoint and kind of tee up the next series of comments and conversation. Please wait.
Yeah, hi. So I think a lot of things are coming together here, but I got 3 things I want to bring up. But just first to this, Brad, I mean, I think what you're hearing over and over again is the community wants to be involved from day one, that they don't want to come in late and kind of hear where it's gotten to between local government and state government without too much community involvement. And that should be seen as constructive by everybody. I hope it will be. So three things. First, a bit of a fact correction. So the orange line, the underpass on the Mystic, the bike path, the expanded green space at Assembly Square, those all came out of an agreement between a community group, a grassroots community group, and the lead developer, Federal Realty. That negotiation was done with the mayor's knowledge, but otherwise offline. So that probably should be clarified. With regard to the turf, I've had a couple semesters of Harvard School of Public Health students do a lot of different practicums. They were responsible for taking lead out of children's jewelry in the state, and they looked twice at some issues relevant to Foss Park. So I was concerned years ago in one of our classes that the top lot was just too exposed, as has been brought up before. We did a nitrogen oxide study across the park. It's a good indicator of mobile pollution. There was no clean place in the park. It was all pretty highly polluted. So the ideas of maybe having clear barriers that are, allow public safety, more greenery, et cetera, and being careful about where we locate things are probably spot on. And I just thought that I would bring that up. Now, Pat mentioned particles. So we also looked at all the soccer fields in Boston, or many of them, and compared the turf fields with black rubber that I know you're not using here, with the natural fields. And again, we had really good grad students, but what we found was the soil under the natural fields had not been remediated. So they were both toxic. It didn't matter whether you were inhaling the black rubber bits and pieces or whether you were playing on what was thought to be a green field, but actually was built over industrial sites and things like that. So in either case, you could probably have a healthier field or a non-healthier field. And in the case of Boston, they had pretty not healthy fields. With regard to the particles, we have done a lot of work here. I live in one of Somerville's arterial highway districts. I don't know if it's got a special name, but I live at McGrath, Highland, and Medford intersection. And I can see Assembly Square right over this park. And I would be interested if we could get the specs on the sand particles or glass particles. If you could pass them to Brad, just the manufacturer specs or something. Be really interested in the size range. So it turns out that many of our lifestyle diseases and aging diseases are actually a function of overreaction of the innate immune system. So that innate immune system was really built over eons to defeat biological threats, but it's overreacting to particles of all kinds. So you get uric acid particles, you get gout. You get amyloid particles, you get Alzheimer's. You get LDL cholesterol particles, you get atherosclerosis. So, and silica is one of the items of concern, whether it's crystalline or amorphous. So it would be really good to know what those specs are. I would never expect DCR to be on the leading edge of that. It's not something I think you should have known, but there's about 200,000 peer-reviewed papers done by the nanoparticle scientists on this stuff, on PubMed, the National Library of Medicine. So it's probably worth us doing a check. And the city's been a great partner in working on these particle issues. Now, I also want to just add on to what a couple of people have already brought up, including elected officials. We have had a couple sessions in the last month, which you referred to, and I appreciate that reference. The first one was an almost all-day session at Partners Healthcare about environmental health along the highways, including neighborhoods, but also including Foss Park. And then we had one that Ben facilitated, a much shorter one, but also at Assembly Square with community ideas. and preferences. So I want to reinforce what other people have said, including Stephanie and the other aldermen, that if we can work together and find outside resources that we can bring to the city and DCR, and you know, the Nature Conservancy spends $1 billion a year on green and open space. There are lots of big organizations, and as climate and sustainability become a bigger and bigger issue, people are looking to cities for the answers, and without nature and cities, you cannot have good answers. So I just wanted to plead for your willingness to work with the community, which is very energetic, very creative, and try to pull together the resources to work together on a grander vision. Thanks.
Great points, William. Thank you, appreciate that. Tori, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tori. I was actually concerned about the light. I guess people on the Fellsway West, you guys still have the sodium lighting. And even though it's less energy efficient, it's safer in that the LED blue or white, the wavelength is actually disruptive to your hormone cycles, it's disruptive to sleep, it's causing central nervous system reactions. It's really, the temperature is really, really bad. And so I'm concerned about how the lighting for the field is going to be. And perhaps you can look at the temperatures, changing the temperature from that super white blue light to more of a pinkish color. There's studies that has been done. I forget his name, is Mr. Morales. He is someone who's been on the forefront of this pollution that is causing, it's come out in the American Medical Association that these lights are, I don't want to say dangerous, but they have adverse effects to your health. And so perhaps considering if temperature can't be affected with the contractor, that shields be considered. They're actually a cheaper alternative to like replacing the light bulb. So just that be looked into for the health of the people who use the field and the residents. And the other one was, I forget who brought up sort of like the need overall for more recreation and different types of recreation after schools, if it's theater, if it's parkour, or it's all these other things. I'm going to make a plug. Summer Vision 2040 is going to start in January 15th. So it's, as it implies, it's a visioning document, it's a comprehensive document for the city, and it's going to lay out the plan for what we want. So we need people involved who are thinking, okay, what do we have for the children? This is part of our goal in Summer Vision, so please participate in that. It starts January 15th, and Ellen?
Awesome. Actually, before you go across the room, why don't we go to Ben, we'll come back over here, that's okay, thanks.
Hi, my name is Ben Azuria. I have a couple concerns. So I'm a lifelong resident, also the executive director of the Welcome Project. So first, thank you for actually doing something about the field. Many constituents who tend to use the field are Latin American, they play soccer, and every week I hear, how they're tired of playing in the Dust Bowl, and literally calling it a Dust Bowl. So the first thing I want to do is say thank you for recognizing that and trying to do it. With that being said, I'm a little concerned about how much use the park will get. I mean, automatically, once you redo a field, everyone's looking at this field. And everyone wants to use the field. This is one of the biggest fields that we have that, that has a lot of free time. I'd like to make sure that the neighborhoods, especially Somerville and the neighbors across the way, can continue to use this park. So how much of it's being reserved is I'm very concerned about. I think, the soccer field's not, the soccer team's not here. But, I did have a conversation with them. They use it on Sundays. They're glad that it's getting done. They're concerned about what their season's going to look like already. So I think having communications with the groups that have been using it in the past, making sure that we're coordinating and communicating with them. And, if there are delays or if there are, even a sniff that we're expecting delays, making sure that they know that these things are happening. Because that way, we can start figuring out ahead of time instead of 3 weeks before we have to now move everything around. There's, some language barriers there, so there's always the issue of also having to find people who speak the languages to be able to be part of these conversations. So it ends up being a longer task. We did hold a 3-hour meeting. There's a lot in those details. You were there, and I'm glad you were there. I think there's a lot of not just concerns. There's also some design ideas. There's also some great other pieces. So I really ask that you take time to read it, to go through with it. We rank things so that way you can see what's the most important parts of things, and and also what was still important but just didn't have all the votes. So that way you can see 100% what the concerns are. And I'm really trying to stress this point because I think we keep talking about park design, park design, park design. And what I generally find is what happens with park design is somebody comes up with an idea of what it's going to look like. We take a, quote, community process. Community process and information gets thrown out the window, and this is the design, and then we say the community decided this is what they want, and everyone sits there scratching their head saying, who said that we wanted this or this or this? So I want to be very clear. We are very big on making sure that that community is involved, and I want to continue to stress that from this process on, that community stay involved.
Thanks, Ben. When I cover you, waiting.
Appreciate that, Ben. And again, thanks for facilitating our session a couple Saturdays ago. I thought that was really effective. We appreciate everybody having kind of that same posture and attitude here about our dialogue tonight. Ellen.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Reisner. I live in East Somerville. I'm also part of STEP. I have one question and a very brief comment. You're working with Mass DOT on improvements to McGrath Highway. Are they going to do something about having the button for, the walk button taken out the island when you have to approach from, if you're going west on Broadway and you want to cross McGrath, you have to race across where the right on red is because the button is on an island. That is like the most dangerous thing I've ever seen. And we've been trying for over 10 years to get that changed. So is that part of it?
Good news for once, yes, it is. It's part of their scope. It's part of those focus areas. They don't have huge money. And it's funny, if I could do a tiny bit of storytelling, the crazy cluster of ramps and tunnels known as 38, 28, 93, Fellsway, McGrath, is one of the statistically most dangerous locations in Massachusetts. Just a couple of years ago, it was ranked as like the 12th most frequent crash location in the city of in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
It's also the #1. The most crashes in the entire state.
It's stunning to me. There was a fatal crash there 8 or 9 years ago. This is an urgent public safety issue, and as a result, it gets fast-tracked on state and federal funding pipelines. Now, if we really wanted to kind of turn this into a humane, slow-speed urban condition, gosh, I assume we'd be talking about $40 or $50 million to kind of flatten everything out. That is not what they're talking about. They've got about $5 million for very modest improvements. And because our staff have been invited to be part of that scoping process, we have talked about this intersection at Broadway and McGrath, small-scale stuff, Ellen, like the pedestrian activation buttons, some of those free slip right-hand turns, like the one by the old gas station that's been vacant for a while now, the Blakely Road intersection, as I mentioned earlier, and some of these edge conditions over here. So all of those are part of their project package right now.
Great. Okay. So now my brief comment is, I don't want to repeat everything, all the great ideas people have come up with, but just want to report to you, I had passed out something earlier, which was documentation of the design charrette that we mentioned that we did 3 weeks ago. It's in the draft form. It will be available in the final version very soon, along with more information about the East Somerville area and Mystic Avenue. We're going to have a report. But I just want to comment that there were so many great ideas that came up at the design charrette. And a lot of them were from kids who really had some wonderful ideas about utilization of the park. And I really hope that we can really take this very seriously because this park, I mean, you played there for your life. We'd like to have people really have a great place to play and in a safe place to play, not with being worried that the lung development of children is going to be, damaged because they're playing in an area of high pollution. So our research work with Tufts has, over the past 10 years, we've had a lot of data on how bad the particle pollution is and some opportunities to do something about it. Okay, just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Al. Do you mind doing
think we can all agree that redoing Foss would be a fantastic thing, but on behalf of SYSL and all the other sports leagues in the city, I think it's of the utmost importance that we do not stall the redoing of that field and putting in the turf field, because right now there's Pop Warner's August is going to be canceled because there's no other field for them to practice. So if you delay that longer and it's stuck in, you'll cancel their season. And from SYSL perspective, we already have kids practicing till 10 o'clock at night, and that will just have to continue. So if you are in favor of 7th graders practicing at night, then we should delay the process.
Could you please fix the sidewalks that go around the park? Another constituency are the elderly people. Elderly people walk around the park regularly, early in the morning, late at night, and the sidewalks are broken. So my husband can't walk by himself anymore. It's unsafe for elderly and young people. So if you could fix the sidewalks around the park, that would be a big help. Thank you.
You bet, Dana. And maybe Mary can chime in on this as well. Are there particular sections on Fellsway West versus on the Broadway frontage?
On the raft.
On the raft.
Find a circle.
Mine is actually, I support that. My comment is on a different topic, which I haven't remembered to mention until now, which is I'd be curious whether there's an intention to have amplification at the new field, and if so, if it could be limited, because it can be very disruptive to the neighbors. There was a time when it was being permitted, or maybe it was being done surreptitiously. I'm not really sure what was the underlying cause, but it hasn't been done lately, and as a neighbor, I have to say I don't appreciate it, at least not with great regularity.
So it's funny, I live just a couple blocks up the hill from Route 16 and Bill Boyce Stadium, and yeah, totally, depending on the wind, I know that the announcer is kind of giving congratulations to a given player or announcing a given play. So I know what you're saying, Mary. Who's next? Quick time check, we're past 7:30. Alderman Klingon.
So again, I hope I didn't come off as like looking at your force in the mouth. I'm absolutely excited to have the field, and I would also echo some of the sentiments about not slowing down the process at all. But I would sort of echo what my colleague Alderman McLaughlin said. Since we do have you here, Commissioner, I am going to ask for more. You know, the field is great, but I'm here talking, representing 2 different child care facilities, Busy Bees and the Elizabeth Peabody House. And, you know, if you could just find it in your pocketbook somewhere, a little bit more money to not only replace that playground, but move the location away from where the such high vehicle traffic is. Now that the baby pool is gone, maybe there's room over on the Fellsway West side. And also, one thing that's been brought to my attention a few times, it's actually a public safety concern, is that the bushes that surround that field, they have poison berries on them. So the kids are, yeah, that's what's, I haven't confirmed that myself, but apparently it's poison berries. So I would honestly ask if you could just find a few extra bucks for that and meet the city halfway. You know, I'll be supportive of the city putting in money, but I would just like to see a little bit more for the children of Somerville who utilize that park so often. And also I'd like to say, as of recent, DCR has changed their billing practices, like the way that you bill for the parks. And actually I've seen a major, I think the Butters can attest to this, has been a major drop off of the folks who play soccer over those leagues because, and I get it, you know, we had a good deal for a while, but I would like you to consider Somerville youth groups to pay a little bit less than you're asking for everybody else. It used to be like a couple $100 for the permit for the whole season. Now it's like $50 per hour at 4-hour blocks. So like some of the leagues went from paying like a couple $100 to like a couple $1,000. And it would just hit the sticker shock hit everybody. I don't know, and my daughter plays youth softball, and we were able to use Foss for most of the time. And a lot of these groups are on shoestring budgets, and you know, Somerville youth sports utilize those fields as they will. I know I understand it's a regional place, but Somerville youth sports use that more than any other group. So I appreciate you maybe looking into that.
So if you'll pardon the expression, we're leveling the playing field with regard to the charging. There were a number of individuals and groups, for whatever reason, had gotten kind of a sweetheart deal for a lot of years through a inappropriate interpretation of the regulation. Regulation is very clear about what the field charges should be. It's clearly stated on the website, and unfortunately, it was unevenly applied. So, good news for some, bad news for others. We really are trying to put everyone on the same footing and make sure that all groups are paying the same, you know, the same fee structure. As a result of this, you know, anomaly in how the fees were charged, we had some groups that were blocking large blocks of field time and yet not using them during all their time. And that's not really fair to other users who are trying to get in. So we really are trying to be fair about how we, you know, now charge for the fields, not just here at Foss and in Somerville, but across the Commonwealth.
Yeah, just to build on two quick questions though. One, would you consider changing the rate for
nonprofits versus for-profit leagues? And the other thing is, I understand you're bringing the cost up to scale of what it is other places, but if you went by there this summer, you'd see that nobody was playing there. So, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at the demand, and so like, if the leagues are gone now, who wins? You lose the little bit of money you were getting, and nobody's playing there. So, I mean, I don't know how we want to address that, but I think there's probably something that could be done that otherwise just goes unutilized.
Yeah. Well, let me look into that, but the fees are set by regulation.
Hi, my name is Alicia Kirsten. I'm a Somerville resident. I've worked at the high school for 20 years. I have a son at the high school now. And as someone who's worked with our high school sports teams, we are thrilled about this. That's actually walking distance from the high school. We sort of took there's been, you know, the whole field system all around Somerville. I think it's not an understatement to say that the field situation is a crisis state. And I agree, Jill works wonders with what we have, but it's not a good service to our students at all. We have a very stressed athletic program because they're just desperately trying to carve out any kind of field space. And it's, echoing what people said before, it's what our kids deserve. And I'm glad everybody's paying attention to the environmental health concerns, and I want that to keep going on, that not playing sports is also a health concern. So having access to those fields and having that curriculum as quickly as possible, and I'm hoping that you're working with the city and making sure that the high school program has access to that as well. I know there's a lot of needs and once everyone's met, but we are thrilled and really hope this goes forward as quickly as possible. Teenagers are kids too, I want to add that.
I can't believe mine's going to be one in the not too distant future. Let me come around to the back. And again, for anybody who's interested in following up on these issues and understanding kind of the citywide ecosystem policies, the open space and recreation plan that our office published, we insourced it, we didn't just hire it out to some contractor. Our staff worked in the community meetings, running the data, working with our local permitting data. So that's a good resource for everybody. We've got a lot of these materials on the web. And you know, if you Google Somerville Open Space and Recreation Plan or Somerville Fields Plan, you can find all sorts of important information to make sure we're all having the next phase of the conversation effectively. So let me go here and then I'll go back.
I just want to echo the health concern. I'm a recent cancer survivor. My uncle passed away from neuroendocrine cancer recently. My other uncle has bladder cancer. My grandmother had breast cancer. My sister had breast cancer. To me, what keeps me healthy and keeps me sane is athletics. Swimming, running, whatever it is. And for my children, who I know probably will be at risk based on my family history, being active is extremely important. More than chemical exposures, being healthy and what we ingest in our mouths is so important. So please, let's not keep our children from being active over these long drawn arguments about health. I'm speaking deep from the heart, and I ask you to remember that. We need to get our kids to run around, and we have them running in microscopic fields, and the athletic programs are stressed, and we have amazingly creative people. Here, the parkour system has created an amazing program. I mean, we have some amazing people here, and we have to help them all out. Okay, I just want to emphasize this over and over. We can't forget the goal is create more space for our children.
Let's come up and actually, if you don't mind, let me make a quick point.
just so folks know, we talked a little bit about the city's work about trying to, reduce the footprint of the automobile, which is unquestionably bad for our lungs, for our hearts, for our body mass. And yet, we're an auto-dominated society. Somerville is one of the most transit-focused, walking and biking-focused communities in the United States. We're ranked as like the 5th most bikeable community in the entire United States, based on the number of our residents who primarily use a bike to get around. 30% of us use the bus or use the train. And yet, if the buses are only running on time 50% of the time, how can you blame somebody for saving up and buying a car? How can you blame somebody for choosing to pay an extra $5 or $8 on their food?
Line was down for 8 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It was ridiculous. And if you can't rely on that, I have a kid. After school stops at 5:30. Does the MBTA pay you when I'm late? Like multiple times in a winter? No, they don't. And so I have to leave work, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster. Sorry.
No, it is. Your outrage is justified, and we share it. And we're recognizing that in the same way that we're having this dialogue with the state agency, with the DCR, a lot of the communities in the MBTA system have recognized that in terms of bus reliability, we have an equal role to play as cities compared with the MBTA. The MBTA can hire more drivers, can buy more buses, but if municipalities are not courageous enough to actually take a lane of travel, a lane of parking, here's an example. If you Google Better Bus Project, you will see amazing videos and advocacy from a number of communities, including Somerville, where we started to do progressive things with the streets that we control so that buses can be running on time more frequently. Anybody who lives in and around Winter Hill and Central Broadway, please see me afterwards. We have been working through a community process over the last year or so and a technical process, and we're going to be proposing to get some dedicated bus lanes painted red where the buses are not stuck in traffic. We think that this actually really helps Foss become more usable and also reduce that polluting footprint of the automobiles by making the low carbon active transportation a little bit more reliable and a little bit more viable. It's small and modest stuff. This is the way the world changes. We will not just cower from the footprint of automobiles in our city. I-93 and 38 take about 200,000 cars a day. Suburban commuters going to downtown Boston and Kendall Square. I say let's shrink the footprint of the automobile by making the walkable neighborhood, the sustainable, reliable transit option more legitimate for residents. So please don't forget that we're working on these things simultaneously to our public space program. David, I'm sorry.
Just back to the field real quick. I know Dilboy Stadium and the auxiliary fields around it are run by the Somerville Department of Recreation. Is there thoughts or plans or consideration for having Somerville Rec Department be in charge of the scheduling for this redone field?
Not at this time. Not that it couldn't be possible at some other time, but at this moment, we're continuing to manage the Foss facility. We have a long-term agreement with the city for the Dilboy Stadium and the pool and the fields adjacent to that. But for the time being, the state continues to manage Foss.
Why did you guys make that decision?
Make which decision?
That you guys maintain it?
Well, we have been operating that facility.
Right, but you are the hours, the scheduling hours utilization is going to quadruple or increase functionally by having nice lights and by having a field that people want to play on and that can be played on and can be played on in all weather. So it's going to be a totally different scheduling circumstance than you currently have.
We manage hundreds of fields across the Commonwealth, so we have the capacity to manage the fields.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Nathan Wicks. I organize the Somerville Youth Middle School Ultimate Program, Ultimate Frisbee. I also coach youth soccer in the city, and I just want to echo the criticality of the timing of getting this field online as soon as possible. It really is a field crisis in the city. People haven't mentioned it. A lot of leagues are either limiting the number of teams or they've stopped outreach because there simply are not enough fields for us to practice and play on. And it's gotten to the point where it really is an equity issue at this point in the city. So we're thrilled that you're doing this. It will be used. And I echo what Dave said, which is that I hope that the city and the state will consider having this be permanent and overseen by the city of Somerville.
Anybody else? Okay, so thank you, Luisa. Housekeeping, if you haven't signed up, and we realize it's been a pretty informal evening, Luisa Oliveira, our senior planner, landscape architect, parks project manager, has a email list. You all have been mobilizing and organizing. We appreciate that. We appreciate all our community partners and advocates who are helping get neighbors organized. If you're not on our email list, please do sign up and stay in touch with us via that. Because, again, our Board of Aldermen asks us, our state delegation asks us, hey, great meeting, or housing meeting, whatever the case is, what are you folks going to do next? What is the city staff going to do next in partnership with state agencies? So it's important for us to make sure that you can get plugged in through our distribution lists. So thank you. Time check. It's coming up on 5 of 8. We do want to be respectful of everybody's time. This is one step in a many-step process, but we'll stick around to continue to have conversations until everybody's going. We want to give people kind of the blessing to start to wind down at 8 o'clock. Alderman McLaughlin, please.
Just real quick, a lot of the concerns here would be addressed if we had control of the park. I'll just reiterate that. But Ben asked a question about obstruction of play that I don't think we've gotten a direct answer on, because that's a huge concern of mine. The turf field, people aren't registered to use the park. People are going to be able to walk onto the field and use it when it's not in use.
So that determination hasn't been made yet. We really have to look at what is the demand for the field, what is the schedule. We know that many of our facilities, the idea of having pickup game is, is an attribute that people want on our fields. The challenge with the turf is it does need to be fenced because we can't have dogs on it. It really has to be managed. So the turf field itself will have a fence around it, so again, the key is to keep dogs, keep animals off the field.
The fence that's going to be locked.
So it just has to have a door, right? Meaning, like, well, the dogs can't open the door, so.
I'm sorry, because this is sounding more and more like you want to make it a money-generating field, as opposed to actually allowing more, allowing free time on there.
I just said that a decision hasn't been made, not that a decision won't be made that allows more.
What's the decision that has to be made?
The scheduling of the field for is there free time, when is there free time, those kinds of things. Those decisions haven't yet been made.
Okay.
And to answer your question, Councilor, about the ownership, it is currently a state asset. So there is a process for property transfer, but the community would have to pay the fair market value of the property, and under Article 97 of the state constitution would have to provide the state an area of land of equal size, and 14 acres is going to be challenging for the city to come up with in exchange for that. So transfer to the city in fee is impractical, and that's why for Dilboy Field, we have a long-term permanent arrangement there, as opposed to the transfer of the fee ownership.
So again, to kind of keep these discussions in important buckets, there's the management and operations side, there's the design and participation and kind of design review side, and then there's this clear message, which is we celebrate the DCR's proposal to invest in our community, and let's make sure that we can participate and advance that in a timely fashion to minimize hardships and maximize the benefit for our residents as well as the regional park users. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming out this evening. I really appreciate the direct feedback. Hearing it from the community directly is very helpful.
Folks, please, let's give Commissioner Roy a hand. He didn't have to be here tonight. You can expect us to continue working with our state delegation, our Board of Aldermen, and of course the Mayor's office. Again, thanks for your time. Look forward to the next phase of the conversation.